text, and 15 gigs of data for just $36 per month. Switching is as easy as swapping out your SIM card. You can keep your phone and your phone number. Here's how to get the best deal. This month, dial pound 250 and say keyword get H2O. You'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Dial pound 250 and say get H2O for this exclusive offer.
Divine Intervention is online at yourfortdodge.com, on Twitter at jmike1400.
This is AM 1400 KVFT, the voice of Fort Dodge. I guess if I want to talk to people, I should actually turn on the microphone or turn up the microphone in my case. Anyway, I'm broadcasting live from the Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters studio here at AM 1400, and our guest is Representative Ann Meyer, which is always good. And we've been talking about mental health funding, so and I want to continue that discussion a little bit. Just so everybody's clear, at least I'm clear.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So let's do that.
Well, so what I wanted to just tack on to what we were talking about before, as far as the funding goes, again, I just want you to know that it just covers the region, the patients that the regions cover, which is below between 133 and 150% federal poverty level. People below that are covered by Medicaid. I'm assuming people above that are covered by private insurance. And, you know, I know that the big talking point on this is it was supported by Farm Bureau. It was a Farm Bureau priority, but I want you to know that.
Well, that doesn't make it evil.
Well,
it's just a Farm Bureau priority.
And I like the Farm Bureau.
Yeah. How many lobbying groups are there in Des Moines?
It's 1,000.
Oh, I would think.
But this legislation was also supported strongly by NAMI, the mental health group,
National Alliance of Mental Health.
Yeah. It was supported by so many people, the chambers. Everyone wants to make sure we have a steady stream of funding, and so a lot of people thought that this was, in addition to me, this was a good way to go, as long as we had the guardrails in place, which we do. We talked about the performance outcomes. So I did want to talk to you about that. But then I also want to talk about the big thing, the other big thing on this bill, which was literally a human resources priority for the last 2 years. And I don't want to just say it's a human resources priority, because it passed the House unanimously. Last year, it passed the House unanimously 2 times this year, because we ran it twice, because we tried to tack it onto we tried to make it an amendment onto one of the Senate bills. We're talking about access, and I told you that's a big thing. We don't have enough providers. Telehealth, as we found in the pandemic, has provided so much access to patients during the pandemic. During the pandemic, the governor said that it would be paid for at the same rate as an in-person visit. So meaning, like, sometimes if a telehealth visit may only be reimbursed at 75% of what a doctor would charge in person. But remember, the doctor has to have the same amount of education, the same amount of time spent. And there's no doctor out there that does 100% telehealth. Well, anyway, that was included in this bill. Telehealth now will be 100% parity by law, as it is an in-person visit. And that was a huge priority for me. And that really pushed me over the edge to support this bill.
Explain that a little bit. Mental health parity means what?
Okay, telehealth parity. So parity just means, so if I'm a psychiatrist, you come to see me, if you see me in person, I would charge you $100 a visit. If you see me by telehealth, which is we talked about over the screen, I would only be reimbursed for 75% of that, even though It's taking just as much as my time. I'm giving you the same experience I'm giving you. And it's easier for the patient as well. I mean, there are a lot of patients with mental health diseases that don't like to leave the house. And there are many patients that are in rural Iowa that have to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to a mental health provider. This saves them time. It provides the service that they need. We can also use some out-of-state providers for this. So it has increased access to mental health patients. And we saw it in the pandemic, and going forward, I think we're going to see a lot more telehealth, mental health visits in the future. So again, not only did it take care of that part of, take care of funding, but it also made mental health visits through telehealth on par with in-person visits. And that has been a priority. We have been working on that for years. And that, like I said, that piece of legislation passed the House unanimously, bipartisan, 3 times. So that was a big, I mean, that pushed me over the edge to definitely support this bill.
When you say we, are you talking about the Republican Party or the legislature in general? Or?
The House in general. We passed it in the House 3 times, and we the Senate wouldn't take it up. Okay. So a little bit of negotiating went on. So
it always does.
They really wanted this. We really wanted that. And we know that it's going to, well, it already has increased access to mental health patients. So I'm thrilled about that. In our HHS, our Health and Human Service budget, so we talked about the mental health money that we're putting in, but we have also increased funding, PMICs, Psychiatric Medical Institutions for Children, called PMICs. They're getting a $10.3 million increase. So they get 3.9 from the state, and then there's a federal match. And that brings it up to, they're getting an extra 10.3. So that's an extra 10.3 million into mental health. Home-based habilitation, which is a big deal. That keeps high needs people in their homes and out of the hospital or in jail. And it keeps them
It's
in
always
the
a good
community.
thing, keeping out of jail.
Well,
you know, and I don't
in
mean,
your own home.
I don't mean to be facetious about that, I guess. Jail is not a place I don't think that mental health people suffering from mental health problems belong.
No, they're not getting treatment there.
The other inmates will tear them to pieces. I mean, for one, you know, they will.
So we have increased their funding by 7.1 million in the state. With the federal match, they're getting an extra 20.5 million. So that's an increase to mental health services. We're also giving a 2.7 million buy down so we're buying the children's mental health waiver waiting list. So we're giving them 1 million. Again, with the federal match, it's 2.7 million. Any money we put into healthcare, it's always matched by federal dollars. So the more we put in, the more that is actually going. And then we talked about the psychiatric residencies. So we increased that by $200,000. So we have a total of $600,000 to expand the number of psychiatric residencies in rural Iowa. So we not only are we putting $10 million extra into the regions, we're doing all that other stuff too. So there is more money funneling into the mental health services. But bottom line is, we need more providers. Yeah,
it is. All right, this is AM 1400 KVFT, the voice for Dodge. Our guest is Representative Ann Meyer. And if you have a question for Representative Ann Meyer, 515-955-1400. Brian Peterson will be in right after the news. And I've been kind of beating the hell out of you here the last couple of weeks over transgender athletes in sports. I do not agree with at all the assertion that this is a case of discrimination against transgender athletes. I'm kind of a libertarian when it comes to these sorts of things. You want to be a transgender, be a transgender. However, I think if there's discrimination it's being pointed at the young girls.
And I want to make this clear because there was a lot of misinformation that came out of our last interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure why.
Did I put out that misinformation? Or?
No, there's some other groups in the state that took that wrong. But I'm just going to say, I do not think men should be competing with women in a women's athletic group. We did not have a bill come forward this session. There was never even a bill that came for a vote this session.
Why is that? It sounded like it should have, but there was I understand Democrats will oppose anything. But,
it wasn't the Democrats. We didn't even get a bill out of caucus.
Why didn't we get a bill out of caucus?
And I honestly, I'm not on the committee that came through education. So I don't know why we didn't get a bill out. But when a good bill comes out that does not hurt girls, biological girls, I will definitely support that because I agree with that. As far as sports go, men should not be competing with women in female sports. It's not fair.
It'll kill girls wrestling. Girls wrestling is just getting off the ground. And Dan, as I've said many times, Dan Gable, who should know, tells us that we have to have young women's wrestling soon and fully incorporated in the schools, or we'll lose wrestling as a sport. And wrestling as a sport in Iowa is a big deal.
But yes, it is.
But a biological male on the mat with a biological female is not fair.
No.
It's simply not fair, and it's not right. So I would ask you what a good bill looks like as far as you're concerned.
Honestly, I think a simple bill would be what your birth certificate says. If your birth certificate says you're a female, you're a female. If your birth certificate says you're a male, you're a male. That's what I would consider a good bill to be.
Okay. So if you were born as a male, you would, and later decide for whatever reason that you're a female, you would not participate or be allowed to participate in young women's sports. Is that correct?
Yes.
That doesn't seem to be too much of a leap for me, and that's why I've kind of harped on it a little bit. It's a simple truth, and it should have been simple enough to get through the education committee. Who's the education committee, of course, is going to be is where the Democrats are going to have their most aggressive people because the teachers union is a pillar of the Democratic Party. So their most aggressive Democrats are going to be over there. And they're the ones that are going to start screaming discrimination and hate and all these other false charges. And they are false. Let's make no mistake about it. There's no intellectual depth at all to the idea that biological males should participate in young women's sports at all. I think I've actually watched the WNBA here the last couple of years, and those young women are so improved from where the WNBA, the Women's Basketball League, was not too long ago. It's incredible. I enjoy watching the competition, track and field, and all those things. All that I think would be lost in the progress that young women have lost, and the respect that young women athletes have achieved by their efforts at progress every single year would be lost if we had a girl with looks like he needs a shave or she needs a shave in a weightlifting competition or track and field competition.
So what does, you bring this up and I can only, what came to mind when you started talking about that was Caitlyn Jenner, who is transgender.
Yes.
She says the same thing.
Yes, she does. If that's the way, and I remember Bruce Jenner when he was in the 72 Olympics, he was a big stud. He was the girls all went crazy for him. And
he's an athlete.
Yeah. And
I think he was a pretty good athlete.
Oh, terrific Olympic gold medal winner. Oh, no doubt about it. And this is where he wound up in life. Now, I don't understand it. Frankly, I think it's weird. But he's got every right to do it as far as I'm concerned. And he has a right to live in peace. He has a right to live in peace. In other words, nobody gets to throw rocks at him when he walks down the street and call him names. That's just flat out wrong.
You know what? That's my point exactly.
Yeah. Well, nobody wants that to happen, but there are some there are some things that are being demanded of us. And if we don't allow them, we're hateful racists. The demands themselves are ludicrous and outside the bounds of logic or reason. And somebody has to stand up and say that one of these days, that it's not a case of hatred or discrimination or being mad at somebody or disliking somebody because of how they choose to live. It's just, this is what we're going to do. If Caitlyn Jenner wants to get back in track and field events at the age of 70, I would invite him to do so. Those young women will leave him in their dust. But we can't have that. And I think most female athletes, young female athletes of considerable talent, and there are many, and they are developing, as I say, more every single year. I think all of these young female athletes would agree with that. They don't have a problem. God, let me speak for the majority of people in the state of Iowa. We don't have a problem if somebody wants to do these things. We may think it's weird. So what? A lot of people think I'm weird or worse. I think I'm perfectly normal. This is the voice of normality, ladies and gentlemen.
The doctor of normal.
The doctor of normal. See, it just doesn't flow like the doctor of truth. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, this is something that should have blown through the legislature, I think. That people have a right to be who they want to be, but we have rules. Wow. Sports has rules.
Yep. And you know me, I am a rule follower.
Yeah.
I am. I mean,
well, now you get to make the rules.
that.
Now you get to make the rules. And I hope there's a representative somewhere who has the guts to stand up and say during a session next year, this is a bill that we're going to pass, and I support it because it's just common sense, logic, and reasonable.
I think there will be.
Yeah. And of course, they will be met with accusations that if we don't allow transgenders to compete in women's sports, they'll shoot themselves, which is kind of an unusual argument. Give me what I want or I'll blow my head off. I mean, that sounds like a 5-year-old, you know, going to hold my breath until I fall on the ground if I don't get my own way. Come on, let's get by all this nonsense and all these false charges.
I would just like to. I see we only have a couple minutes left, so if you don't mind, I would just like to tout a bill signing today. So
tout away.
We had a huge room for the tax bill, and Governor called yesterday and said, "Hey, we want to sign House File 302, which was the child care cliff bill, which is a graduated exit program for child care assistance. So as a person makes more money, they'll, instead of falling off the cliff and losing all their benefits, they'll just have to increase their copay. Been working on this solidly for 2 years, and I am thrilled to say it was signed by the governor today. So I'm very thrilled about that. And I think I want to tell you, there's 80 people sitting in the 80 families sitting in 200 to 225% federal poverty level. Those are the people that are geared to move up into the next level and then become independent. And I'm very proud of that. Even if it helps one family, I'm very proud of that. But we want to break the cycle of poverty. And this is one way to do it, to show an example for their kids that this is not, you don't have to live on an assistance program and stay at a certain level. We want everyone to work their way up the ladder. And
boy, that's a hard life on assistance, I'll bet you. I mean, come on, what kind of life is that? You know, no wonder people are hopeless and turn to drugs and alcohol.
Exactly.
And crime.
No one wants that.
We have to give people hope.
Yep.
And know that their ambition and hard work is going to be rewarded. I don't think that's too much to ask from any society or culture.
This is a bill that passed the legislature unanimously, both the House and the Senate.
Outstanding, Ann.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, Iowa has a fine tradition. That's why when somebody says that these are jobs that white people won't take, it drives me nuts, because I know that Iowa especially has a culture of hard work. We respect work. We expect work. We expect to be paid. We expect to earn. We expect to earn our own way all the way, and that's what made our state great. Ann Meyer has been our guest. Thank you very much, Ann, for being here as always. Brian Peterson of Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters is coming up next. And I'm broadcasting live, by the way, from the Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters studio. 4 o'clock.
Straight talk on life and money. This is the Dave Ramsey Show on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400, KVFT.
Face-to-face, not eye-to-eye. Lisa Brady, Fox News. President Biden summing up his first summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
It was important to meet in person, so there can be no mistake about or misrepresentations about what I wanted to communicate. I did what I came to do.
And both leaders describing the talks as constructive while acknowledging ongoing disagreements. They agreed to seek strategic stability with a dialogue on arms control and cybersecurity, though the Russian leader in his solo news conference sidestepped questions on hackers based in Russia and defended the treatment of political opponents. President Biden pledging to keep raising the issue of human rights. Back in D.C., Senate Democrats are laying the groundwork to go it alone on infrastructure.
Budget Committee Democrats are meeting to begin putting together a spending plan for infrastructure and other social safety net investments.
We've got to move very quickly. Really, the clock is ticking,
Senate Budget Committee Chairman Bernie Sanders says a measure is likely to be ready before the August recess. A budget process known as reconciliation would allow Democrats to pass aspects of President Biden's American Jobs and American Families plans without Republican support. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she's optimistic about a voting rights bill after proposed changes in the Senate.
We must pass the legislation. It's not about Democrats or Republicans. It's about our democracy. And the clock is ticking on our democracy when it comes to the sanctity of the vote.
West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin has said a version passed